Is this just fantasy? Of course not. This is Red Nails. So I have decided to do a three-parter covering this important story in the world of Conan and adaptation of Conan the Barbarian, as well as just fantasy comics in general. It's a pretty pivotal story, and the comic adaptation is, of course, very important and seen as a masterpiece and everything. But what I'm going to talk about is first this version, then I'm going to talk about a newer version of the same story, and then lastly I'll compare the two. So, this is Conan by original Conan artist Barry Smith, or as he's known now, Barry Windsor Smith, BWS. And this is the oversized Marvel Treasury edition from 1975. So this is not the original, publication of his adaptation of Red Nails, which I guess I'll just say real quick. Red Nails is one of the last Conan stories ever published by Robert E. Howard, if not the last one. It's near the end, and it's considered widely one of the best, or just one of the most important. And so adapting it was a big deal. And so this is Roy Thomas and Barry Windsor Smith adapting it. And this is a few years after the start, this is a few years after the start of the Conan comics run. And I think at this point, Barry Smith might have been moving away from doing the monthly series, and so this is kind of a special case. But this is not the first published version of it. It was originally published in Savage Tales in 1973, issues 2 and 3. I don't have those. And for the reading of it, my first reading of it, I didn't even have this. This is the first time it was colored. But then later, in 1982, they came out with this guy, which is after the fact reissue, recolor of Red Nails. And I'm going to compare the two of these because I think there's some interesting things to say about both of them. But frankly, this is, there's an important thing to note about the difference between the two, but mostly going to be sticking with this version because, one, it's bigger, and two, this one was actually colored by Barry Windsor Smith. So that's, I think, an important distinction because there's also modern day recolors of it, and also, for that matter, modern day black and white reproductions, because the Savage Tales was a black and white book. So the first version of this was in black and white. And so here, a great table of contents. I'm very excited to talk about this because it's widely considered a masterpiece. Yeah, Barry Smith there. With special assist from Silvio Buscema, which I think was probably doing inks. So this Treasury edition, which I'll talk about more fully at some point, specifically the other stories in here, but I am going to skip this and to talk directly about Red Nails. So I'm just going to go ahead and move along here because this is based on another Robert E. Howard story, Rogues in the House. So I'm going to just pass this, guerrilla fight here. So right away I want to compare the kind of frontispiece here and the coloring in here, just to show as a comparison. So right away you can tell that because the quality of the paper is a little different, the colors come out different. So even if the colors were exactly the same, these would end up looking more vibrant, right? But here, if you look, you have all kinds of little detail going on here with just how he decided to color the city in the background, how he's coloring Conan himself, and just the whole thing. And here it's just completely different, or it's mostly different. Get used to this blue in this version because they throw it on a lot of things. Whereas here, I don't think it's just pure blue. Oh wait, I guess it is for the most part. But like the rest of this is a little off. Like this color is a little different. This title is different. You know, and I could go on and on. I could just compare the coloring of these two. But also I feel like the printing of it, this is just not as good. But we're going to get into it. So this nice little splash here, but that has really nothing to do with the story. So here's where the story really begins. Now I read and then recently listened to Red Nails, so I'm familiar with the source material. And there's a lot of the source material in this adaptation. I'm not here to really compare how close the adaptation is to the original story. I will note places where they're identical, but I'm not here to tell you if this is a successful adaptation or not based upon how close it is to the source material, because I'm here to judge it on its own merits. And we are, right away, we get some just beautiful art from Barry Windsor Smith, and we get our first look at Valeria. And I will note that in the book, or in the short story, she is wearing these little shorts, and I think that's a nice little, all right, she's wearing that, and yeah, she's letting her horse drink at the pool. And just to kind of cover the story really quick, she's on the run. She's an ex-pirate, or I guess you could say still a pirate, but she was working with a group of pirates, and she ended up killing the brother of somebody important, and she's on the run, something along those lines. And so she's fled. She's on the run from them, but she's kind of in this unknown, uncharted area. And so as she's hiding out here, she's not expecting to be found, especially by a certain Cimmerian who was also working with those pirates. And yeah, we get some nice lush greenery here. I'll just, again, just for comparison, that's the color in this guy. And, you know, it's brighter for sure, but is it, I don't know. There's something about the softness, the subtleness of it in here that's just really nice. And of course the line work is great. It's gorgeous. And yeah, it's an interesting adaptation. I will note that this neckline is going to plunge continuously throughout the book, and I find that kind of funny. Anyway, so she climbs to the top of this hill because she doesn't know where she is. She wants to get a better look at things, and she finds a skeleton up there. Good looking skeleton. And she can see like a walled city in the distance with a bunch of bare ground in between it. So that's like our first hint at something interesting coming. Really love these lateral lines here on the look. It's a great isolation of moves here. But that said, it's a very tight like set of panels, meaning just look how dense these pages are as far as how many panels. So let's see here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So 9 panels, not a traditional 9-panel comic grid, but still 9 panels on this page. And 7 over here, something like that. And so yeah, that's a lot of panels, a lot of text, because Roy Thomas cannot spare a single line from Robert E. Howard. But yay, good action poses, good lettering, and yeah. And of course, we have our Conan. And here, at this point, with Barry Smith, we get a little bit more of a swole Conan. And because I would say that early on, he was a pretty lean muscle kind of guy. And here he explains that he's not after her, he's not chasing her for the pirates, that he just left them and decided to join up with her, and that she didn't know he was being followed by somebody, and he took him out for her. And she's like, I don't need your help. And Conan and Valeria, so okay. Just going to say something real quick, and hopefully we can move on pretty quickly. First of all, I love this purple in there. But in the short story, it is made very unambiguous that the reason that Conan followed her is because where the gang was hanging out, or the pirates were hanging out waiting to make their next score or whatever, he didn't find any of those women attractive, and he really wants to, spend the night with her. And he just, in the way it's written, it is very much, he just is eye fucking her constantly. And like that is all that is on his mind when he's looking at her, and she knows it, and she, for the most part, just rebuffs it. And I don't know. The only other thing I'll say about that is that there's a lot of kind of uncomfortable, like, race talk, meaning, like, there's just weird talking points about how Conan and Valeria feel about the way certain people look, or based upon how they look, what they expect of them technologically, or what have you. And in a modern day sense, it's something that in adaptation you would try to leave out, or you would definitely leave out in the modern day, because it just doesn't really add anything positive to the story. I guess it's accurate to include it, but there is a little bit of that in this adaptation. And I don't really want to harp on that, because there's so much just to the art that is worth talking about more than that, but I will just note that it is part of it. Anyway, so they're on top of this cliff, and they're trapped here, they're about to be trapped here because they hear their horses get eaten, and it's because they're being attacked by what they call a dragon, but is clearly a dinosaur. And that's the other thing about that this is true from the source material. Specifically, not even just that it's a dinosaur that they're calling a dragon, because it's like from the ancient times or whatever, but in the short story, the way he describes the dinosaur, or the quote-unquote dragon, he is 100% describing a stegosaurus. And that I find kind of hilarious. Definitely of the time. I'm guessing Robert E. Howard didn't know or care that a stegosaurus is an herbivore and doesn't have teeth like this and what have you, because he definitely describes the plates and everything on the back, but that it's clearly a carnivorous dinosaur is how he describes it. So I find that kind of an interesting of its time anachronism. I also love the idea that in Conan's world there are dragons, but they're just leftover dinosaurs. Don't expect me to be able to explain why there's still dinosaurs around. It's ancient times, and it's made up timelines and science and whatnot, but still there's dinosaurs in there that they are dragons in this era, and that's fine. That's cool. I like that. But it is hilarious seeing a carnivorous stegosaurus. But hey, Barry Smith came to play, and so he's drawing it. One thing that I do find interesting, and I'll throw images, is a choice that the latter-day colorist made for this sequence. mostly I don't like it, of course, because it's just this awkward, like kind of early era digital coloring. It just makes everything, I think, look worse, and doesn't let this line art shine. And I feel like this kind of the old school coloring really just lets it all work together. I know that it was originally a black and white story, and it looks really great like that. But anyway, in the modern one, the colorist decided to color the dinosaur red. And while it doesn't make a lot of sense for like natural camouflage blending into its environment, boy, does it make it stand out against all the green of the forest a little better than it does here. Not to say that Barry made a bad choice or anything like that, but it's just that this dinosaur, it doesn't quite, to me, it doesn't quite have the impact it could if color-wise it was able to stand out. And that's another thing, is I feel like the coloring of it, while I think is really accomplished, there's not a lot of risks being taken. There's it's well done, but just very kind of expected, you could say. And also not, I mean, I guess there's a little bit of a distinction here, because sometimes Conan is colored a little more red than the people around him, or because she is a little lighter skinned. I think it's just like at the lightest yellow setting, and he's got a little red to him, just to designate, I guess, they're different. But yeah, that is pretty common. The most part he is set aside. And then here he makes her sit on his lap because they're hiding up there, and this thing is just waiting for them to come down so he can eat them. And they recognize that the skeleton man was hiding up there and died. And then they discover these fruits that have poison in them, and Conan decides to stab it in the mouth with that poison on the stick, and that's what kills it. I'm going through it quick because there's a lot to cover, and this is just the preamble. And so this is part of every version of it, which is, they have to get rid of this dinosaur, and there's this really great splash panel. This is some great coloring. I like this. Like the lines there. Doesn't look quite as good here. Yeah, it's a little rough, isn't it, folks? Anyway, I still like the coloring. It's just, yeah, if this thing were a different color, it would definitely stand out more. And so then they decide that while this thing is in its death throes, they're going to try to run, but then it smells them because the wind changes, because it's gone blind from that fruit. And then Conan does this crazy move where he's running with her, and then he like throws her. And I love this panel right here where he's like running with her, and then he's just straining, and you can hear this thing bearing down on him, and he hurls her forward. And this is just great posing here. And I love these action lines back there. He throws her, and he strikes it with his sword. And this is a great panel. I really love this. And I love that we get some big panels in this comic. There's not a lot, frankly. The panels are pretty small, just because he's trying to pack in this adaptation as much as possible. And Roy Thomas will not compromise on the amount of text he has to include in there. Which, again, it's all the exciting words from Robert E. Howard that he loves. But, I like that he's going to let he's going to let him have a couple of big panels like this, which include her, like, almost looks like she's gonna break her neck right here, just like landing on her freaking head as he threw her, and he swings his sword. It's a crazy sequence, and I really like it. It's some of the best stuff, and it's already in the beginning, so it's pretty great. Yeah, and so then this thing goes off, smashes its head in a tree, and dies. and then they decide to move on from there and head towards the city, and they stay the night, and he doesn't sleep because he is too masculine for that. And yeah, she's okay, so she's fine. And then yeah, they make some note about the fact that this city doesn't fit this part of the world, that the people who live here don't build structures like this, and so it's unknown. And that's a fun detail. That's one of the things I really like about the story is this mystery, because there's this giant, looks like a giant fortress, castle, whatever, and it seems out of place, and there's nothing, there's also nothing planted in any direction. It's like kind of in the middle of this blank plain, and there's leftover, irrigation ditches and stuff, but it seems abandoned. It seems dead. Great cross-hatching in here. And then Conan's able to just muscle his way into this thing. And I love this really dark panel as the light comes in. Just really great storytelling. And that's the other thing, is that even with so many of these little panels, like if you give each one its space and time as you read it, you can really get that atmosphere the atmosphere out of it. Because I feel like if you're just breezing through reading just the text, you're gonna miss the joy of the comic. And so they enter this place, and it's got this kind of eerie lighting because these jewels are lighting it. But the idea is that this city is in all interior. There's no open air, there's no windows, there's no courtyard, there's no streets. It is all covered over. It's just this massive, like, indoor city. And it's super old, but it's like abandoned. And what I like is right here, there's what looks like a glass table. There's just like foot passes, like you can see it through it. I don't know. It's interesting. And also the coloring is very interesting because it's just very light. I got some dust kicked up here. And again, every once in a while, I'll kind of bring it back to this adaptation. This is the exterior shot. And also, it's weird. So, here's this page. And again, they decided to make the building red, stand out. This is not the one that has the dramatic, dinosaur different coloring. But yeah. Also, there's interesting choices being made, because there's sometimes where it looks like they're looking at his stuff and it's just brighter because it's a different style of printing. And other times, it just looks like they just made a different choice. And also, there's no record as to who colored this version, which is, like, again, this is 82, and this one is from 75, 75, yeah. So, and Barry Smith is known to have colored this version. And yet this version, and then this version, they just, I guess because they've resized it, I don't know if that has anything to do with it, or if because they were printing it on different paper, they needed to do a new color job. In any case, those greens stand out a little more in this version. And also, what's interesting, this one's cropped. Look at this. And look. Here's what this panel looks like in the Marvel Treasury Edition. Here's what the panel looks like in this one. So we have the top of it, right? But then it cuts off right here at the feet. I thought there was more to it, and I was right. And it's in this version. In this version, we get the whole panel. And then this one is also cut off. I mean, it's just the bottom of the panel, but still, you don't cut off Barry Windsor Smith's art. But yeah, isn't that wild? Because, all the stuff that's on that table that makes it look like a table is missing. What an odd turn of events, man. I didn't realize that. Yeah. Anyway, they go in, they're looking for treasure. And as they're looking around, they see some art up on the walls and everything, but the whole place seems empty, and she decides, I'm tired of looking, I'm just going to rest, because I don't know, she just needs to rest. And then she hears something, and it's doesn't think it's Conan, and there's like a guy, like she like comes to this she comes upon a balustraded gallery, as the text says, and she sees this guy, but he doesn't look like the figures in the artwork. I guess this is meant to depict like who built the place. I don't know. So she sees this guy. I love this nice big panel. But I don't know. There's something interesting about the design of this place, because as I've been looking through it, like I'm still not like sure design-wise like what kind of architecture we're depicting here. And I don't think, I mean, I guess it's just a made-up thing, so it doesn't really have to reflect a specific culture or look culturally cohesive, but it just kind of doesn't. But that's fine. It's a made-up culture, and again, the artwork, the line work is gorgeous. And she sees him go through a curtain, and then the guy shrieks, and she goes into the next room, and she sees that he is dead. And then she sees another guy come in, and that's when this crazy skeleton thing comes in and is menacing this guy, and it's got all this, and it's got horns. This thing is awesome. I really love it. I just think it's incredible. And just what a fascinating, it's simple design, but still like super, super neat. I love the line work here. Yeah, and this thing just, comes out of the dark. It's just very eerie. And this thing is about to kill him, and it looks like there's eyes in it. Triumphant over mankind. And she dives over the banister, rushes this thing, and without hesitating takes a swing at it and kills this man who's wearing it. Because in this sequence of panels, we've come to see that it's a suit of some sort, and it's not a skeleton, and it's just like a magical ruse. And this skull goes falling to the ground, and this guy's like, what? Who are you? Like, and you killed that demon. Like, how did you do it? Because this thing has like a magical aura around it that terrifies people. And because I guess she just attacked it so quickly, it didn't affect her immediately. But anyway, so she's met the people that live there. And one thing that I find interesting about the people who live there, so one, they all have vaguely kind of Mayan/Aztec influenced names. Like they have that kind of sound, like composition of words and names from those cultures. And I don't think that they're meant to be like indigenous Central American people, because I don't know, there's been a lot of scholarship about where the world of Conan, like it maps to in our world, and what cultures he's referencing. But all the names and such, all in this have, just vaguely kind of indigenous Central American culture to it. But the look of it, the way that he's drawn them in this comic, wouldn't suggest that. They don't really look like that. And I'll also note that they're all like gray, like this kind of odd gray color. And what I gather from that, from me, at least what my mind does, is that they're gray because they've lived for like their whole lives practically. I think their whole lives actually in this place without the sun, which is fascinating to me. It's very weird. But yeah, they live here without any sunlight. And so I think that's why the choice was made to like that they're like this kind of pale gray looking people. But the only reason I'm bringing it up is because there's a lot made of it in their racial makeup and the questions about it in the short story. That's the only reason I'm bringing it up. Anyway, so he's saying, we got to get out of here. And she's like, no, my friend's still not here. And he's like, that skull is evil. And that the idea is that this place was built by wizards in ancient times, and that they're buried in the catacombs underneath, along with all their like relics, including like magical items, and that to basically skip to the cut to the chase, these two warring factions are living in this giant building. It's basically one giant building, and I'm not going to get into their names because, again, there's just a lot. But the idea is that like they are having this feud that's lasted for 50 years, and even like the guys that started the feud aren't alive anymore. But these factions like keep delving into the catacombs to find an edge on their enemies, and these people have found this dead wizard skull. And with that dead wizard skull, they've been able to like intimidate people. And she killed this guy who was using it, but then when she takes a look at it, it like kind of stirs this eerie madness. And there's this cool sequence here where she's looking into it, and like this where it's masked onto her face. And yeah, that's where the Roy Thomas captions / Robert E. Howard captions are doing some good work. It snapped together like something from a nightmare. But then, and he's like, don't look at the skull, but she's trying to resist it, and there's this fear in her now, and then she smashes it. Really good panel here. The whole sequence is really good. And so she smashes it, and he's like, the dark gods are going to be angry with you that you did that. And then he's like, we got to leave. And she's like, but my friend is nearby. And he's like, forget him. We got to go. And so he kind of like leads her on. And that's where like we get a little act break before we move on to the next part, which is the lurker from the catacombs. I like this, of course. Like, and yeah, this is definitely because it was broken up, and they have to put adapted from the story Red Nails, Robert E. Howard. But they got our call outs here again, and this is just to set us up again. But basically, Conan, he went on to look around in this city, and then he turns because he hears he's looking for her, and he hears the sound of fighting, and then as he runs around, he finds that Valeria and their new friend, I believe is Tecotl, are fighting the rival group. Let me get this great close up here of Valeria kind of spattered in some black blood, because this is Marvel after all in this era, and they don't want any red blood. And this guy's like biting on her leg. These guys are painted with the skull, because I guess the skull was their like leader, or one of their leaders. He's not their leader, but like he was important to them. And then here she cuts off this dude's head and throws it. So just good old time. And then here's where we get a call out to the title, Red Nails, where he says, 5 dead dogs, 5 slain, 5 crimson nails for the black pillar. So that's the idea. The god of blood be praised. So the idea, and it's not precisely spelled out in this, or necessarily too specifically in the short story, that there's this pillar that to commemorate every enemy they slay, they drive a red nail into this pillar, and so that's why it's called red nails. Makes sense. Anyway, remember what I said about that plunging neckline? It's a lot lower than where it started. I'll use this as a comparison. But like, here's where it was at one point in the story, and here's where it is. And there's not a canonical reason for it, or by canonical I mean there's not a story reason. It's not like her outfit gets cut up or torn, because even here it's higher. It's just it's not like I'm like continuity issue, because who cares? It's a fun comic. It's just a detail that I find interesting, is that at this point, after like the act break, the wardrobe changed, and she's, you know, her shirt's got a little more open. Anyway, so then they befriend this guy, and he kind of gives them the skinny about it, and that like, we live over here, and the other guys live over there, and we've been having this feud for about 50 years. And we get more of a sum up coming up soon, but he's trying to lead them to their protected side. And there's all these specifics about, like, you know, this part of the palace is, you know, has been blocked off, and so we use this corridor and whatnot. You know, part of the richness of the story, but definitely not privy to just kind of enjoying the adaptation at the speed we are right now. But yeah, but all around, you know, they're rushing to get to safety. And one part of it that I do remember from the short story is where they are traveling and it gets really dark, so they can't really see anything around them. They can just hear the footsteps, and they hear that somebody's coming towards them from behind. And Conan, he like swings his sword behind him, and like he cuts through something, but it's not like human flesh. And so there's some sort of creature, and I believe, yeah, they call it the crawler, that he lashed out at. And yeah, just great panel here, great line work. Gotta love that. Anyway, they get to the door and they pass through it. Look at this hatching right here, buddy. Look at that shit. Barry Windsor Smith just proven to everybody that he knows how to throw a line down. You know, they're breaking through the door. They're coming for him. This is Tukulti, I guess. Yeah, Tukulti is maybe his name. Again, the names, like I said, they have a certain convention to them. They sound very similar. There's a lot of X's that are used for S's or Z's, I guess. Zotalonk. And yeah, Zotalonk is the bad guys. And then in the name of Set, Father of Serpents. So yeah, these people are from like Stygia, wherever that is. And also we get our first chainmail shirt up here on this guard. But most people are basically wearing Conan's outfit, which is like a bikini bottom, and that's it. But this guy's actually even got a helmet too. But they're allowed in. They all have that weird gray skin. And they come to meet the leader. And this guy says, like, these people are great. They killed the burning skull and killed enemies. And then here's that pillar with the nails in it. And there's a certain thing I want to point out about it. Also, I love the stones on the ground there, really pushing that perspective for us, because he drew all those damn lines to give it perspective. He wants you to notice, goddammit. Anyway, so here's, yeah, the pillar with the red nails. And if we look at it, zoom in on it, here it is. And there's like maybe a couple other shots, or maybe at least one other panel that has it in it. It's never prominently featured or commented on in this adaptation. We were 5 ren for the Pillar of Vengeance, right? So they mention it, but and it's there, and you know, you got to notice it, but it's not like, I don't know. And the only reason I'm harping on it a little is because it's the title. You kind of, why don't we get a little more attention paid to it, because it's, otherwise you may miss it and it's just like, oh, it's just named after the line. Like, no, there's the red nails right there. Also, here we got our kind of leader here, Prince Olmec. And again, sounds, yeah. Anyway, and he's got just the biggest beard. And I think that's part of the short story as well, because it's in the other adaptation. And then this lady's barely wearing anything, and that's Tessella, and she's important. But again, how come he gets to wear a bathrobe and she just is wearing the Slave Leia getup? Before Slave Leia, I will note. Anyway, so they sit them down to eat and share food with them, and it doesn't, I don't know if they say so in this adaptation, but I know at least in the other one we're going to talk about, they mentioned that, because one of the things I kept harping on in my brain was I was reading this, is like, where do they get food if they've never left because nobody's across the doors in a super long time, and so like they never leave. And so I'm like, where do they get their food? How do they grow food? And it's like there's these like weird fruits, which is all they eat, that grow in the upper levels of this place. Don't know what that is, but fine, covers it. But anyway, we get a little bit of a exposition about how their people were essentially, they traveled, they're escaping their homelands over more than a half century ago, and they left Stygia. They passed through the forest with the dragons in it, and they were, eaten up a bunch. And then they came to this place where there were people living there, and then one of their slaves came out and was like, hey, I'll help you break in. And he's like, okay. And the two who become the leaders of the rival clans are like, yeah, sure, let's do that. They go in, they kill everybody. They're the man Tolkamek, who is the slave that helps them break in, is like super mean to all the people who had enslaved him. He tortures them. There's lots of torture in Conan stories, like original stories. I do enjoy how there's less of it in other people's tales, but there's just a lot of torture in them. Anyway, the story is that after they, took up to living in there, essentially the two rival guys got into a fight over a lady, and that's what started it. And what they don't say here is that this is the lady, but that was a long time ago, and she still looks young, and that's important. Remember that for later. So anyway, they've just been fighting for a long time. I love all these summation panels. I also love that he colors them just a little bit differently, just to set them aside that it's in the past. And this guy with his great big beard. Here's the red nails again. Again, not super prominent. And then there's, I think, maybe one of the last times we get to see it right here. But still, got an interesting pattern and color back here. But they're basically like, you're welcome, and also if you help us like defeat our enemies, you can take all the treasure you can carry out of here. And they're like, fair deal. And they were mercenaries before, they're mercenaries again, Conan and Valeria. And so Conan's like, I want you to stay with me tonight, and she's like, nope, get fucked. And so she goes off to her own place, and he goes off to his. And then here's where he learns about Tessella's the woman that the two men fought over. And then here we cut back to Valeria in her bed, and she's just taking her shirt off. Because, hey, I want to get comfy too. So she's having this dream where there's this big flower over her, and she wakes up and it's like Tasella's servant, and she's trying to like drug her, and they have this fight, and of course in the course of the fight, Valeria starts like beating and whipping this lady, and I don't enjoy it. It's just it, you know, Valeria's like, we get it, she's like a hard ass, she's a pirate, she's a great fighter and everything, but she also apparently is totally fine with just whipping this lady with you know, in causing severe pain and whatnot. But then she's dumb enough to say, after she's tortured this person, because torture doesn't work. That's the thing, folks. Look it up. Torture really doesn't work. But yeah, it's a hell of a scene, and she's like, I won't, let me just give me some wine, and then I'll tell you everything. And so Valeria gives her it, and then gets a face full of wine. And then Valeria just like runs out after her, still not putting her shirt back on, which, you know, I don't have no problem with. But then she hears a bunch of fighting, and oh no, she hears that girl get attacked by something in the catacombs, and then she suits up because they're like, the bad guys are here. They're here. They got in somehow, and they're fighting, which is weird because in the short story and in the other adaptation, we see how they get in. It's actually, they use more kind of found magic objects to get in. But then we just cut to this big fight, and we just have a big fight. Like, look at this amazing panel. I really think it's impressive. Get all that great perspective in here, and then we also get just all these figures in here, and they're all in different states of fighting. But we also, color-wise, we can designate Conan and Valeria up here. And I think that's Tasella, and then Prince Olmec is somewhere in here because he's got a great big bushy beard. Anyway, they come in, they wreck house, but this is seen as like, here he is. He's just in a diaper, and yeah, we get some blood finally, some red blood, and there's her plunging neckline. But yeah, what happens is they're fighting viciously, and the idea is that this is the very end of these guys. Like, there's no more. And by the end of this, where these two are covered in blood, as you can see, spattered in blood, that this is it. And like, Conan and Valeria are like, this is kind of weird. Like that, you know, because they start howling and celebrating that they have killed every single last one of their enemies. And then here's, the last, this is the only time where it's prominently pointed to. Here's the column with the red nails. Not red. I will note, not red. Anyway. Hey, we don't need to be literal. Relax about it. Anyway, they have successfully killed the last of their enemies, and Conan and Valeria are like, they're done with this place, but Olmec says, I want somebody to go and check their territory just to make sure there's nobody else left hanging out there, and then you guys can be off. And so then Conan's like, yeah, sure, I'll go. And Valeria's like, my leg's kind of hurt, so she needs to get it bound. And then here we get a little hint as to why they got in. It's these magic pipes. And we see it in the short story, but we don't see it here. And you got to cut something out in the story. And then here we get, as her leg's getting bound, Prince Olmec attacks her, and he's basically like, it's you and me, babe. And here we have Teoldal seeing this, and he gets decked. And then here we get Conan and a couple of dudes like basically checking to make sure that there's any more of those guys. I'm zipping through this because there's just a lot to cover, and we're getting to kind of the end or climax. But here's some important bits. Here is these guys come across a crawler, which a crawler is like this weird reptilian summon that the ancient wizards created or called into being, and these guys have been using them to attack the enemies. But they just find a dead one, and that is in the short story. And if I had any notes for Robert E. Howard, if he was submitting this, I would have been like, cut the crawler if you're not going to have him fight it. That's just my feeling. I know that like it kind of falls into the themes of death and decay that this story has, that like, you know, this is just the bitter end of this, you know, half century of hate, and that even this thing is been used up and doesn't even get a great moment. It's just dead. It fits the theme, I guess, but I would have loved to have seen Conan properly fight it instead of just slash at it in the dark where we can't see it. Anyway, cool crawler, but anyway, it's gone. And then instead of red nails, the other guys apparently have just been collecting their enemies' heads, which that's a hell of a panel, right? I think it's behind glass, which you get this glare here, which is a nice little touch. But yeah, this is a way better way to keep track of your enemies, you know, their deaths, is keep their heads. And then this guy sees his brother and then just flips out and smashes the glass and grabs it. But then Conan quickly realizes that these guys were sent to kill him. So like the whole point of going over here was just to get him isolated so that they can surprise him and kill him. Also, Conan's hair has gone white here. I don't know, but you know, you get some dramatic lighting here, dramatic coloring. Yeah, Conan is basically revealed that like he wanted us to kill you, but we don't know why. And so then Conan is like, this place is a madhouse. And then he decides he needs to go back because of Valeria's left alone. And here's something that I find interesting that is less common in modern comics and more common in older ones, just because they only had so many panels and pages to fit everything in. It was such a tight business that you couldn't just sprawl for as long as you wanted. And I call it the mid-page scene shift. And it's, yeah, like I said, it's less common now. Most of the time, artists will plan a page to last a whole scene. And it will last a whole page at least. And then if you change scenes, you shift it to the next page. But here we have the tail end of this scene, which lasted several pages. And then we get to this scene ends here. New scene starts halfway through this page. And I'm not saying that it's bad. I'm not saying that you can't do that or it's whatever. I'm just saying I'm just noting it because that's a thing that happens much less now. In the modern day, if they were doing this, they would have either truncated some panels to move this to the end of the last page, or they would have extended these panels to last this whole page and moved all this stuff a page on. That's all. Anyway, he's whispering sweet nothings. He's like, be my lady. We can just drink and love make the rest of our lives. And she's like, I'm not having it, because here we have Tessella, who's really in charge, and she already has power over him, and she makes him drink this like kind of poison, and that just knocks him out because she has other plans for him, and then she has other plans for our poor Valeria. And we get a little bit of a fight. Great line work here. There's all these great little lines in the background. And everywhere. And just, yeah, Tasela is merely impressed, but yeah, she has a specific plan. So she's remained young for a very long time. How do you think that is? And it's a shocking secret. And I'm guessing it's definitely a relatively new thing when this story originally came out, like the original Red Nails, but it's not a concept that's even at that point new. I'm sure that there's older tales and legends and folklore that utilize this, but the idea that she's going to siphon the youth and life force from Valeria to remain young. And her also, I think her plan before this dude said that he was going to kill Conan, she was going to basically replace him with Conan, because she doesn't want the bearded bees anymore. She wants a nice clean shaven man. So anyway, we're moving into the final act. Conan has to save Valeria because, of course, this woman who's been nothing but like self-reliant and powerful has to be rescued by Conan, because that's the name of his name on the story, not Valeria. He's got to do the rescuing in the end. And he comes up on the one guy who was befriending them. He's been stabbed in the back, and he tells him that, like, there's no more dragons, you can flee, but Tasela went to this place, and so you gotta rescue her. And then he dies. And so then we get this cool silent panel, or set of panels, where he's moving through, and I just love this. Look at this, how it keeps getting tighter from here. And there's gaps in the panels, and then here the gaps disappear, and it just gets tighter and tighter, and then until he gets his sword out. That's a really great transition. I really like this, especially this crazy lighting coming through here, like casting shadows on his face. Although again, his hair gets light sometimes. I guess it's just the weird eerie lighting in there, which again, Barry Smith is thinking about that weird lighting, whereas whoever did this isn't. See? It's just the same bog standard shit constantly. Let me get this panel here. Oh yeah, and these guys, they look this color gray instead of this color gray. Don't know. So, more torture here. Olmec's on this machine that every time he moves, this ball falls closer to crushing his face. And for some reason, Conan decides to cut him loose and try to get him to help him save Valeria. But you can never trust a man with a beard of bees, can you? Because he turns on him real quick. And again, I'm zipping through this, but it's just like, what else is there to say except this is a highly accomplished work. Because yeah, I think the color works great. I think the line art works great, and he's telling this story with rather a lot of gravitas, I would say, because he's giving it all the time and space that he can, right? With the space available. But yeah, they fall down the stairs, crash through, and then they show up into, here we have our torture chamber, or not torture chamber, our human sacrifice, our altar. And now we have Tasela up here. Of course, we have our naked lead here, our sub-lead, Valeria. And then our pillar of red nails. I guess it's featured more than I had previously said, but it's still, there's no close-up of like a red nail, which whatever, but still, I'm just like, that's such an interesting choice. Also, Conan's necklace is broken. Nice little detail. And all these people here still alive. So these are the only people still alive in this place. And yeah, poor Valeria is all trussed up and stripped, I guess, because you got to have that in this pulpiness. And Conan goes to save her, and then he steps on a bear trap. I hate it when that happens. So then, yeah, she's going to stab her and then, like, suck the soul out of her, suck the youth out of her. And as she is about to do it, Tolkien shows up. So what I think I kind of skipped over is they decided to, at some point, he fell out of favor because he betrayed both sides of this conflict, and the last people that caught him, like, tortured him and then trapped him in the catacombs to die. And they assumed that he died long ago, but no, he's just been living in the catacombs, like barely even human at this point, and he's got a magic wand with studs on it, and also no chin. That's an eerie detail I've always noticed about this, is he's got his chin just fades into his chest. But anyway, he comes back because there's rumors that, like, his ghost still haunts the catacombs, but it's not his ghost, it's actually him, and he's taking revenge on her for everything, and all of them, basically all these people that had done him dirty. And Conan's just in shock. Get another great close-up where, again, his chin's fading into his chest. It's an interesting choice. And then we have this really cool lighting effect here with the tiles, where he's charging up his wand. And this is him using a magic wand, and this lady, she gets her bra shot off right here. Look at that. And he just shoots a laser through her. And then everybody starts fleeing, and then he just starts shooting his laser at everybody. And this person gets their head blowed up. That's awesome. Love it. So, yeah, Tolkien just wreaking havoc on everybody. Tolkien just blasting away. And, yeah, great panel here. I love how he's just holding it kind of like an odd way here. Like, maybe even, like, I don't even know if that's his thumb, but he's just kind of holding it in a weird way, because he's barely human, but there's this eerie, ghoulish delight as he incinerates and blasts these people. And in this version of it, I have this kind of little print defect where, like, there's just no, like, the ink line just disappears in the middle there. That's not how it is in this version, so clearly those ink lines exist somewhere. They just didn't here. Also, no cutoff here. We're getting the whole panel. But anyway, he's just blasting people left and right until there's really only a few people left, and even Tassela's like, you gotta fight him for me, because, like, I don't know what else we can do. And so Conan he breaks out of this bear trap, which is a very modern bear trap. It's not even like a fantasy one or an old-timey one. It's just looks like a modern bear trap, but whatever. It's a way to hinder him. And so then he kind of grabs he has like a human shield here, and he gets Tolkien attention. Valeria is broken free, but she's hiding back here. And he keeps blasting away. It's a very exciting conclusion. I think it's great. And yeah, he's like going to slay her, or he's going to slay him, and Tolkien's about to do it. And every time, it's just this great tense scene where, like, every time Tolkien moves, Conan moves too, and eventually says, Conan, the door, you're in line. And then he, like, does this very, like, Captain Kirk flip, throws the knife. I love this knife in mid-throw here. And he just gets him right in the heart. And this death sequence is really cool. Fascinating. Yeah, and then he dies. She picks up the wand, and she's like, she's like, she's like, you know, and then now I'm going to defeat you and then also steal her soul. But then she gets stabbed by Valeria, who's found a curtain to wear. But that's it. Everybody's dead. Everybody's dead. And they decide, we're done with this place. Let's go and plunder. And now she's kind of sweet on him. No kiss or whatever, but still, she's sweet on him now. And then they're going to show the world what plundering means. And that's very important because that's the last line of the short story. And yeah, look at these great lines right here. So yeah, that is Red Nails. Yeah, this great image right here. His shield's disintegrated. And yeah, that is in memory of Robert E. Howard. How sweet. And a killer image on the back. Wonderful. Barry Smith. So that was Red Nails. Fun, wasn't it, folks? Yeah, so this is considered a great Conan story and a masterpiece of adaptation and just a masterpiece of comic work. I think it's absolutely wonderful. I think that it is exemplary work from the era. And I think that when it comes to like things that were adapted at that time, this is the best of them. I would wager at this. Just not just Conan, but just kind of anything from this era. I feel like if it comes close to this, it's a great adaptation. I think it's pretty close to the short story. You know, we got our dinosaur and everything. And, you know, there's, of course, things left out, deviations. There's less talk of race in it, which I appreciate. But ultimately, I think that it's just wonderful. And I wonder, could it even be topped? Well, we may find out next week, or next episode, I guess, when we talk about the other Red Nails that exists, which I'm also very excited to talk about. So, how do you rate Red Nails? Is it the best Conan story? Is it the best comic adaptation? Is there nothing better than this when it comes to Conan, or is there stuff that you enjoy more? I mean, it's hard to say. I mean, yes, I think when it comes to Barry Smith, this is tops. So, that is what the episode's about. Now I'm going to hawk my wares. Please take an interest in Side Questers. This is the first complete story arc, the first volume, and it is my story of a giant lizard man who becomes best friends with this kind of straight-laced warrior, and they go on side quests. And I love it, and you should pick up your copy of it. It's available on my website. And if you like fantasy comics, or even if you like short stories, you might like Haxan, which is my anthology series, which has several short stories in each volume. Each volume 60 pages, and they're all like magic and sorcery, and they exist in the same universe as Side Questers, and they're both available on my website, so give those a look. And if you like old school comics that are colored the old school way, you may like 3-Panel Origin, which is my weekly webcomic series where I create a character and tell their origin in 3 panels. And it's colored in that old school 4-color style. And it's also got a bit of like a tick energy. And here is a book that contains a couple of short stories based on some of the wild characters in 3PO. That is my sales pitch for today. Come back next time. We'll talk more about Red Nails.